second lesson of English for the 11th grade. In period number 2 of Unit 1, we have some tips for smarter learning. Let's try to recognize this title. Tips for smarter learning. What do we mean by smarter in this topic? Smarter has two meanings actually. The first one is a literal meaning. When I say literal, it means معنى حرفي للكلمة، أي المرادف المطابق حرفيا. هنا the literal meaning for smarter is cleverer بمعنى أذكى. But the second meaning is the non-literal اللي هو الغير الحرفي، وهنا معناها quicker. So in other words, it means we have here some tips for quicker learning. So in this lesson we are going to discuss how could we make our learning more effective. How could we learn more effectively? Effectively بمعنى بفعالية أكبر أو فعال بشكل أكبر. So let's see how can we develop our learning styles. How can we learn quickly? Let's start the second lesson by the first skill, which is skimming. You can now open your book at page number 6 to have a look at the topic. This is the shape of the lesson in your book of period number 2. As you can see, we have a report. This report has a main topic and some other subtopics. عنوان رئيسي وعناوين فرعية. The main topic is tips for smarter learning, and the other subtopics are visual learners, oral learners, physical learners. And I think that you are now familiar with those types or styles of learners. This report includes a diagram, as you can see. It's like a spidergram. It's about global warming. Do you think this picture or this diagram is connected or related to the idea of the topic? Does the topic talks exactly about global warming? I don't think so. Because the title talks about tips. And now we are going to learn what does it mean. Let's start with some of the new words. The first word that's new to you in this lesson is labeled. 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 Which means مصنف. It has the same meaning of called or classified. So these are the synonyms for labeled. But when we give a call or a classification for something, in this way we are giving it the name incorrectly. Look at the following example. He is labeled as selfish, but he doesn't deserve that. So this label, هذا التصنيف that is given to this person is not correct. So that's why we are using the word labeled instead of called or classified. So this word labeled is used when the name or the classification is given incorrectly. Labeled. Let's move to another word, but before that, let me clarify that the word labeled could be an adjective or could be a verb طبعا in the past participle في التصريف الثالث. And the noun for this verb is label. Label تصنيف. Labeled مصنف كفعل في التصريف الثالث أو كصفة. The second word is tips, which is mentioned in the title. Tips is a noun. Let's read the following example. let me give you some tips about being a good friend. So some tips. بعض النصائح. كلام سليم. So the synonym for the word tips is pieces of advice. And it's important to note that the word advice could not be used as a plural noun. So when we want to mention it as a plural, we have to use the word pieces before it. So pieces of advice, it has the same meaning of the plural tips. But tips itself, it could be used as a singular word or a singular noun, like tip. The last word now is adapt. 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 Adapt is a verb. When children go to different school, it takes time to adapt. بمعنى يواجه أو عند انتقال الأطفال إلى مدرسة جديدة أو مختلفة يواجهون صعوبة ويحتاجون وقت للتكيف مع البيئة المحيطة الجديدة. The synonym for the word or the verb adapt is change. Change. You try to make changes in your character or in your way or in your style to be suitable مشان تكون مناسبة للبيئة الجديدة الموجود أنت فيها. So the verb adapt بمعنى يتكيف. Well, those words are enough for now, because now we are going to make scanning. We are going to read the text in details in order to answer some comprehension questions. Let's start with the first paragraph. I'm going to read the paragraph, then we are going to answer the comprehension questions. Traditionally, schools tend to use particular teaching methods, either visual or oral, using books, CDs, and written tests. Pupils who learn well with these styles are often seen as clever, while those who use different styles may find themselves in lower classes, labeled as slow learners. In reality, they may be neither slow nor specially clever. But if they are treated differently, they may begin to believe the label that others put on them. Well, let's see the following questions. The first question: what teaching methods do schools often use? Methods بمعنى طرق أو وسائل تعليمية. Teaching methods طرق أو وسائل تعليمية. إذا أساليب التعليم المستخدمة according to the first sentence, schools tend to use particular teaching methods, and in brackets we have two important methods. What are these methods? They are the visual and the oral. بنفهم من هذا الكلام إنه المدارس تستخدم طرق تعليم تتناسب مع أنماط التعلم لدى الطلاب، وخصوصاً النمطين الأساسيين visual and oral. Now you are asking yourself, what about the other words in brackets? Using box, CDs, and written tests. Those are not methods, because the word method is more general than techniques. Now look at the second question. What teaching techniques do they use for them? بمعنى إيش هي التقنيات المستخدمة في أو ضمن هاي طرق التعليم المستخدمة الأساسية. So what are these teaching techniques? They use books, CDs, and written tests. Well, now let's complete the following sentences. Visual and oral learners are seen as, طبعا هي معنى صيغة passive, are seen as, from the text from sentence number 2, clever. So visual and oral learners are seen as clever. Number 2, other students are labeled. Now remember the word labeled. It is used when we give a label or a name or a calling that is incorrect. It is unsuitable. It is not right for them. They do not deserve this name. So, other students are labeled as slow learners. Put true or false. The writer believes that students can be classified to clever and slow. Of course, according to the text, according to this paragraph, the writer doesn't believe in this. He feels that it's incorrect to name other students as slow. Number 2, students who are labeled and treated بمعنى يتم التعامل معهم, and treated as slow, they believe in that label. بيؤمنوا بالتصنيف أو بالمسمى المطلق عليهم. What do you think? Is it true or false according to the paragraph? Yes, it's true. Because in the last line, in reality, they may be neither slow nor specially clever, but if they are treated differently, لو تم التعامل معهم بطريقة مختلفة عن الطلاب visual and oral, they may begin to believe the label that others put on them, فهم هيؤمنوا بأنهم slow learners, وهم هيصير عندهم قناعة بهذه الفئة اللي هم تم وضعهم فيها. Paragraph number 2. But it doesn't have to be that way. Becoming more aware of your personal learning style can help you to take control of your learning by using techniques that work well for you. For example, here are some tips on how to adapt your study to your learning style. Now, number 1. According to the writer, يعني من وجهة نظر الكاتب حسب رأيه زي ما أنت شايفة من خلال سرده للأفكار. What do learners need to know? They need to know their learning styles. Number 2. Students need to know their learning style in order to take control of their learning. To take control of their learning. إذا الطلاب بحاجة، طبعا هذا حسب رأي الكاتب، الطلاب بحاجة لمعرفة نمط التعلم الخاص فيهم الأساسي. To take control of their learning عشان يقدروا يتحكموا أكثر ويكون عندهم سيطرة أكثر على تعلمهم. طيب السؤال الأهم number 3. How can students do that? يعني how can students take control of their learning? By using techniques that work well for them. In other words, بمعنى آخر, by using techniques that help them to adapt their learning to their learning style. Well, so الطلاب هنا بحاجة لمعرفة الأساليب أو التقنيات اللي ممكن تناسب نمطهم في التعلم وبالتالي they can help themselves to develop their learning style. Well, let's move to the subtopics. In these subtopics, we have the tips that was introduced in the second paragraph. So here, for each type or style of learning, we have some tips, some techniques, how can they develop their learning styles. The visual learners. Turn your notes into pictures, charts, or diagrams. Don't have things around you that might distract your attention. شغلات ممكن تشتت, distract your attention, تشتت انتباهك, مشتتات. Look at general ideas first before focusing on details. فكر في النقاط العامة, الأفكار العامة before details, قبل تفاصيل. Use mind maps, spidergrams, etc. instead of written notes. Such as the mind map that we have in front of us about global warming. So if you are a visual learner, it's better for you to have a mind map like that to summarize the information. For oral learners, record lectures, محاضرات, record lectures or lessons to listen to later. Discuss ideas with other students. Read textbooks aloud when you are alone. Listen to quiet music while studying. And for physical learners, take frequent breaks when studying alone. You need breaks. Learn new material while doing something active, for example, exercise. Work while standing up. And finally, take subjects that include practical activities and field work. In your book, in the same page, page number 6, below the text, you will find this exercise. Here are some more pieces of advice. Which type of learner are they for? So here we have pieces of advice. It's about techniques for the learners. Number 1, do something with your hands while studying. So this technique suits a certain style of learners, which is the physical learner. Number 2, use colored pens to highlight important ideas. Of course, this technique could be useful for the visual learner. Number 3, repeat material aloud in your own voice, or in your own words. Of course, this one is suitable for the oral learner. And finally, number 4, use flashcards when studying vocabulary. Of course, this is for the visual learner. In exercise number 2 of your book, here you have the main vocabs that you have to understand them in details. But I have to drag your attention that in grade 11, you have to try to guess the meaning of the new words through context. من خلال السياق المفروض انك تبدأي تتعلمي انك تفهمي معاني الكلمات الجديدة. وبالتالي هيكون تعلمنا بهذه الطريقة للكلمات. In exercise 2, replace the underlined words in these sentences with words from the text. The sentences are in the same order as the words in the text. إذا الكلمات المخطوطة في الجمل اللي قدامنا في التمرين هي مرادفة للكلمات الجديدة الموجودة أصلا في النص، ويوضح لنا إنه الكلمات هتكون مرتبة حسب ترتيب ذكرها في النص. Let's start. Number 1. There are several different ways of solving this problem. So in paragraph number 1, you can find a new word which has the same meaning of ways. Actually, it is methods. Methods ذكرناها بمعنى طرق أو أساليب، وذكرنا إنها أعم وأشمل من كلمة techniques. إذا الميثود الواحدة تشمل عدة techniques. فهذه هي الكلمة الأولى عندنا. It's a noun. كلمة method بمعنى طرق أو أساليب. The synonym for it is ways. Number 2. If you are called a clever child, people expect you to do well. So the synonym for the word called is labeled, which we have already discussed. Number 3. She asked me for some pieces of advice about the best way to solve the problem. Surely, the synonym is tips. Number 4. Teachers sometimes change material to suit the needs of their students. And the synonym for change is the verb adapt. The last word, number 5, shall we look at the general idea first and leave the small points till later? The synonym for small points is details, بمعنى التفاصيل. ذكرناها in the first subtopic about the visual learners at the end or at the last tip. So details بمعنى التفاصيل. It's a noun. So these are the main words in this lesson. Now, let's find the synonyms, antonyms, and pronoun references from the text. From the first paragraph, we have a group of words. For example, the synonym for the word generally, عموما, it is traditionally, which is mentioned at the beginning of the first paragraph. عموما. Incline to or prefer, it has the same meaning of tend to, يميل إلى. Specific, the adjective, it has the same meaning of particular, خصوصا أو خاصة. Badly, the opposite of it is well. Like, it has the same meaning of as. The word as, it's mentioned in the first paragraph. They are labeled as slow learners. So as, it has the same meaning of like. Intelligent, in the text we have its synonym, which is clever. In fact, or actually, they are synonyms for in reality. Similarly, the opposite of it is differently. And of course, the meaning for start is begin. Think, it has the same meaning of believe. Now let's come to the pronoun they. In line number 4, what does it refer to? Well, in line number 4, this is line number 4. So, if they are treated differently, they may begin to believe the label that others put on them. Yes, the pronoun they here, what does it refer to? Of course, it refers to students who are labeled as slow learners. Now, from paragraph number 2 and the subtitles from the tips, we have the same meaning of conscious, الوعي, aware, واعي, conscious, واعي, aware, واعي, adjectives. Lose control, the opposite of it is take control. Lose control, يفقد السيطرة. The opposite is take control, يسيطر. Transfer, change, or become, all of them are synonyms for turn into, يتحول إلى. In place of, it means instead of, بدلا من. Noisy, the antonym for it is quiet. It is mentioned in some of the tabs. Regular, it has the same meaning of frequent. Frequent بمعنى regular. Frequent bricks بمعنى regular bricks. Exclude, of course, its antonym is include. Well, in the second page of the lesson, you will find another paragraph. Now, this is, as you can see, a chart, and it gives us an ending or a conclusion in a way or another for the idea of the writer that he is trying to convey. Now let's look at this chart. As you can see, it is in the shape of a triangle and it has many parts, and we have some percentages. Let's read the paragraph to understand what does this chart show. There are many ways to learn something, but how much of what you learn stays in your mind? In other words, how much do you retain? The chart below shows how much information is retained on average for different learning methods. Well, so according to this paragraph, this chart includes methods of learning or learning methods. And next to each one of them, we have a percentage, we have an average of how much do we retain from these methods? Of course, we need at first to understand what does it mean, the word retain. What is the synonym for the word retain? What do you think? Does it mean choose or keep or repair? Of course it means keep، بمعنى يحفظ أو يستذكر، يعني كم مقدار الكم من المعلومات اللي ممكن إحنا نسترجعها أو اللي إحنا نستذكرها لو استخدمنا واحدة من هاي الطرق. For example, when we listen to lectures, let's start from the top of the chart. Listening to lectures, الاستماع للمحاضرات. When we listen to lectures, we can retain 5% of what we listen to. But if we use another method like reading, we can retain 10%. Listening and watching together, so we can retain more, 20%. Watching a demonstration بمعنى شرح تفصيلي, we can retain by this method 30%. Discussing ideas with others, بالمناقشة, we can get 50. Doing something in practice, we can retain 75. And finally, teaching other people, we can get 90%. So as you can see, the one in the bottom is the most beneficial one. أكتر وحدة مفيدة. So, can you help me to write a title for the paragraph? What title could be suitable for this chart and its paragraph? Actually, this is an important question. Simply, we can say how to retain better. And you could be more creative when you want to write a title for this paragraph. Well, so below this paragraph you will find some sentences that helps you to understand in details. The first one, people remember most about a subject when they remember most. أكتر نسبة بيستذكروها. Of course, when they teach other people. طبعا هاي النقطة بحب أنوه لفكرة أو مقولة بالعربي رح أذكرها. تقول أخبرني وسوف Moving to number 2, we only retain a tenth of what we يعني 10. We only retain a tenth of what we of course read, of what we read. And in number 3, with fellow students يعني مع الزملاء مع colleagues أو classmates is a good way to remember them. So discussing ideas with fellow students is a good way to remember them. And finally, number 4, what method seems to be the worst way to learn something? Of course, on the top, listening to lectures. Listening to lectures seems to be the worst way to learn something. Well, so this is the end of period number 2. I want you to think deeply, look at this picture. I guess that it gives you some ideas of how could we give a conclusion for this topic. So again, this topic talks about the tips for smarter learning, and at the end of this topic, the writer is giving us a chart. This chart shows that there are some methods that can help us to retain information better than others. So, what conclusion could we come up with? Think deeply and write for me in the comments, what do you think? Thank you for watching this lesson and have a nice time. Goodbye.